Hello everyone and welcome to another battle report. This is Napoleonics this time. It is the French versus an alliance of Prussians and Russians. So this is a scenario based on the 1813 campaign, and the French are defending this farmstead. So they have their forces arrayed there, and the Prussians and Russians are pushing through this woodland and have to try and beat the French out of this area so that the main Russian and Prussian force can move up along this road and continue harassing the French army. So that's the basic scenario. So the objective for the game is that it's going to be an 8-turn game, and the French will win if they control at least 2 of these zones, and there are 3 zones here, which is this area, and this field here, and they are occupied by a battalion of infantry. There's a battalion up here in attack column, and a battalion defending the hedgerow in line, then occupying this area. The rule is that 1 full battalion can occupy it, or 2 smaller units. So in this we have the French 6-pounder and the Voltigeurs, and then occupying this yard is another battalion of French. And then coming up in support is a unit of Lancers currently in march column. So over on this side we have the Russians. We've got 2 battalions of infantry and a supporting cannon, and then it's almost the same for the Prussians, 2 battalions of Landwehr and supporting cannon with the skirmishers there at the front. So it's largely equal. The French are outnumbered in terms of brigades, but the French have quite a large brigade compared to the smaller brigades of the Russian and Prussians. So the attackers, the allies, are going to get the first turn. So without further ado, we'll have first turn and come back and see how the allies are then. So there we are, end of the first turn, and very straightforward turn it was. I'm playing against the clock tonight, so everything infantry-wise is moving 8 inches, and cavalry are going to move 12 inches. So movement was quite quick. The Russians started off very strong with their Moscow regiment pushing all the way up to here to attack the French battalion in the yard. But the other battalion, not so lucky, only got 1 move and just ended up at the edge of the ford there. I'm allowing units to cross fords and things as long as they're either in attack column or march column, just to speed the game along. They wouldn't be able to cross bridges if they were in line formation, for example, and cavalry have to go into march column in order to go through it. The mixed success as well continued on the Prussian side, with both the Jaegers and this unit of Landwehr pushing right up to threaten the other zone of the French are defending. But the other battalion failed its order, but because it's in march column, it could make 1 move forward, and then that left the cannon out on its own. Both commanders have pushed up across the bridge, across the ford, just to lend their support for next turn. So we're going to go on and do some shooting now for the allies. So the first regiment to shoot is going to be the Russians. Now I am using the Clash of Eagles profiles for my forces, so that means the Russians are still not quite as good shots as the rest of the European armies. So unless they're within half range, they're always going to be hitting on a 5. They aren't in half range, and they're also hitting across a barricade. So they're going to get 1 shot in their attack column, and they're going to hit on a 6. And they don't hit. Surprise, surprise. The volunteer Jaegers have got 2 shots, and they're going to target these Voltigeurs. Now they are within half range because their rifles have got 12 inches, but however, they're shooting at skirmishers and they're also shooting into a built-up area. So it's going to be -2, which is going to be meaning they hit on 4s, goes to 6s, but +1 for half range, they're hitting on 5s. And they managed to get 2 6s, which is a disorder on the Voltigeurs, who then have got to take 3 up saves for being in the built-up area, and failed both. So those Voltigeurs are now actually shaken, only having a stamina of 2. So they're disordered and probably are going to have to take a break test. They are not having to take a break test just yet, because they haven't suffered excess casualties, but they are now shaken and disordered, so not a good start for them. The Landwehr Battalion are just slightly out of range of any targets, so the only other thing to fire is going to be the Russian 12-pounder, which has a 48-inch range, and it is going to target this battalion here. So it's got 1 shot, and it's going to be hitting on a 5+. And that cannon misses, and I'm just going to measure up the other cannon, but I think it's short too. The Prussian cannon is just in range, actually, of the Voltigeurs, so it is going to fire a shot at them as well, but it is going to be a 6 to hit. And there we go, so they've been hit by artillery, which is -1, negating the 1 for the built-up area. So the Voltigeurs are saving this on a 4+. They don't save it, so now they're definitely taking a break test. At -1. So, do the Prussians drive off the French Voltigeurs in the first turn? They do, which is a 4. They're off the board, so the Voltigeurs have disappeared. Quick and effective fire from the Allies in the first turn, and they could be threatening the French lines very, very quickly. But now it's time for the French to respond, so moving into French turn 1. End of the movement phase for the orders phase for the French, and just so. So started off with the Lancers. They managed to change formation and steam up, charging the Landwehr Battalion, which then formed square. So they're now in square with the cavalry in a flanking position up there. The other units then failed all their orders. They couldn't do anything. This battalion attempted to move out into a line here to pour fire down, failed their orders twice, which left that attack column up there, and these units here just in their position. But all is not lost. We're going to go into some shooting now. So the French are going to get 2 dice shooting here against this Russian battalion, and they are within half range, I think. Oh no, sorry, 12 inches shooting. My mistake. They're not within half range. 18 inches for the muskets, rather. So they are within half range. 18 inches. So they're going to get 2 shots. They're going to be hitting on 3s, and they hit twice. The Russians are going to be saving that on 3s because they're in attack column, and they failed twice. So 2 casualties on the Russians so far. The cannon is then going to fire into the skirmishers. They have 2 shots. They are hitting on 5s because it's skirmishers, and they're within half range. So 1 hit on the skirmishers, and then the rule for cannon that I read in the Clash of Eagles book is that it carries on to the unit behind, but you get 1 less dice, and that just represents the cannonball firing through. So they are hitting a square, which isn't good for the square, and they hit the square and disorder the square, so that's not good. So a disorder square there, and now a save on the Jaegers, which they fail, so they've taken a casualty, and then a save on the square, which is a 6+, which they fail as well, so a casualty on the square as well. So cannon fire being very effective there and putting casualties on the Prussians. This French unit can shoot the Voltigeurs, So they are going to shoot into them as well. They are going to have 3 dice because they're in line. And they are shooting skirmishers, so there's going to be 5s to hit. And another hit there on the Jaegers, which they will save on a 4, which they save. So the Jaegers are standing firm in face of that fire. And that's it for the French turn, it seems. The cavalry in a good position with that disordered square. So let's move on now and see what the Allies can do. Okay, so into the Allied turn 2. The Prussians aren't looking good. The Landwehr didn't get enough in their command roll. Even with the reroll, they only managed to move towards the cavalry. Their intention was to form line and pour fire on it, but now they're danger close to a unit of lancers and are in march column, so that's not good. Square is disordered, has to stay where it is. The artillery fared a little bit better, managed to get across the bridge and ready to pour fire down on no targets actually, because the Jaegers charged the artillery, suffering no casualties to closing fire. They all missed, as did the closing fire from the French battalion, all missed, and the Russians managed to close the charge there. The Russian battalion in the rear failed, and they are now stuck where they are. So there is going to be only one instance of shooting actually in this, and that's the disordered square is going to fire against that unit of oh well, the artillery might shoot. I'll measure that up in a second. But the disordered square is going to shoot against the lancers, so they are disordered, so it's going to be -1 to hit, +1 to hit because we're within half range, so it's just going to be a straight 4 to hit. And they do hit, and the lancers will save that on a 4. And the lancers fail, the lancers take a casualty. The Russian cannon is in range of this French battalion over here, so it is long range and they are behind a hedgerow, so it is going to be a 6 to hit, and that is not a hit. So that is it for shooting, so we're going to move on to some combats. Okay, so we're into the first combat, so it's going to be this unit of Russian musketeers are going to attack the French battalion controlling this zone. Now the Russians are bloodthirsty, so the first time they fight, they get to reroll all field hits. They're in attack column and they have charge, so it's going to be 3s to hit. And they get to reroll all field hits. So they hit with 5. So the French are going to attack back. They get 2 attacks and they're hitting on 4s. And they miss with both. So the French are going to have to take 5 saves of a 2+. And they fail 1, so 1 casualty on the French. And we're going to tot up the scores here because the Russians may not have done enough. It's very hard to get through buildings. So the Russians did 1 casualty, but the French get +3 for holding a building. Neither are supported, so the Russians have in fact lost that combat. And that means that they are going to have to take a break test. So, this is going to be 2d6 straight. And that is a 6, so I believe they are retiring 1 full move to its rear. And then becomes disordered. Oh no, so that wasn't a successful charge for the Russians. Doesn't really matter. So this unit of Jaegers is going to attack the, oh gosh, cannon. And it's going to be actually hitting on 4s, because I forgot they're defending the wall, which didn't really make a difference here in this combat. So that's 1 hit, and then the French artillery get 1 attack back and miss. So the French need 1 save of a 3 or 2. They do save it. So there is no break there. That is a draw in that. because they are not supported. They're just too far away. So that is going to rage on, but that artillery piece will probably disappear very, very quickly. So that's it for the Allies turn 2. Let's move into French turn 2 and see if they can salvage the situation. Alright, end of the turn for the French, and a lot happened. The army decided to take a surge forward to take the fight now to the Allies, taking advantage of this disorder happening over here. So the Lancers tried to charge the march column, which quickly formed square, and the Lancers very wisely used the rest of their move to just reform here. The attack column managed to get a good roll and is now up in a strong supporting position for this battalion, which also got a good roll, hopped the hedge and has formed line now, ready to pour down fire on this vulnerable square of land there. The cannon is still locked up with the skirmishers, and over here, having seen the Russians off, the French want to now finish the job. They've hopped the wall, formed into line, and are ready to lay down some fire on that Russian battalion. So, without further ado, let's start with that. So we've got 3 shots here from the French, and they are going to be hitting on 3s. And that is a disorder and 2 hits. So the Russians will be saving these on 3 pluses. And managed to save 1, so they are taking another casualty. Russian units have a stamina of 4, so they're not yet shaken, but that is still a disorder on them, which doesn't put them in the best position. So moving over here now to this French unit, they are going to pour fire down on this square. So again, 3 shots in line formation, 3 to hit. And again, same thing, a hit and a disordering hit. So 2 saves of 4 for the Landwehr, and they manage to pass 1, so they take another casualty and are also disordered. So another disordered square there. And that's it for the shooting for the French. So it's going to go into combat, which is going to be over here for the cannon, which gets 1 dice, hitting on a 4+, which misses, and then it's going to be 4 dice for the Jaegers, and that is going to be 1 hit, so 1 save for the cannon on a 3+ for being behind the building, and they save. So that combat is a draw in terms of casualties. However, they are now within 6 of this unit and are now within 6 of this unit, so they are supported to both flanks. So it is the Jaegers who are having to take a break test, and they're going to roll and get a 4, which means that the Jaegers actually have been seen off by the cannon. So I've just looked up the rules, and I think I have actually done that right, that the cannon never actually lost combat, because I know the break test results of artillery pieces losing combat is that they're just automatically destroyed in black powder, but this cannon never actually lost, so the crew actually managed to fight off that detachment of Jaegers. So yeah, kudos to the French. I suppose these things happen in warfare, but that is the end of the turn for the French. We're going to move into the Allied turn and see how they can recover the French counterattack. So this is Allied turn 3. This is the end of the turn for the Allies, and a successful turn for the Russian brigade, but not so much for the Prussians. So the Russians managed to get this 2nd battalion up into attack formation and support. So this French battalion now have 2 very strong Russian units looking down on it. The Prussians completely failed all of their orders. The first order they tried to do was get the cannon to move up so they could put some grape shot perhaps into that French line battalion. Failed that order and failed it twice, which means now that this square is just left sort of stuck. in the middle of the board. So that is where they are. So we're just going to go into some shooting now. The square here is going to shoot in against the French line battalion because they're the closest target. So one shot and they're going to be hitting on a 4. And that's a hit and a disorder, in fact, on the French. So actually a 3 to hit too because they're within half range. So the French have a save there of a 4+. So they managed to take the save, so no casualties, but they are disordered. And then the same one shot into here, and this is going to be a 4 to hit because close range, but they are disordered. And that is a miss. So, one shot from this Russian battalion into the French, hitting on not a 4. And then one shot in here, they're within close range, so now they are hitting on a 4. And they miss as well. So that is the Russians done. They hit on a 4. Russians hit on a 5, remember? Because I'm using the Clash of Eagles rules. So Russians always hit on a 5. So they wouldn't have hit with that 4, even at close range. So the artillery is now going to fire over the heads of their companions and try to put a shot down here on this battalion too, just to put the pressure on this flank, because the Russians are in a strong position. They could perhaps break through. So 1 dice hitting on a 4+, because the hill negates shooting over the heads of their fellows. And they miss. So cannon not too effective. That's it. There's no combat this turn. So the Allies are making some... It's hard to know, to be perfectly honest with you. That French battalion is disordered. This one's very fresh, and we have one in there in support. So let's see what the French can do in their turn 3. Alright, end of French turn 3, and the French are proving their generalmanship again. They only really needed to do one order, which was to get that unit into line, which they have. The cavalry are going to stay in support. The cannon is now freed up to shoot at that square, which it will do. And this battalion is holding firm in the face of the approaching Russians. So there's no combats this turn for the French, it's just straight into shooting. So this battalion is going to shoot at the wounded French battalion, or the wounded Russian battalion, because it is just within range. So 3 shots hitting on 3s. And that's 2 hits. The Russians are going to save on 3s because they're an attack call, and they save twice. On over the cannon, shooting the square, +1 to hit. It's within half range, so 2 dice, hitting on 3s. Missed. Oh, this unit is going to attack the square. 3 shots, hitting on 3s because of half range, and then 4s because they're disordered. And there's another disorder on that square. So that square has just been stuck the entire game in that position. And then we're going to go over here. This battalion is shooting against the other square. 3s to hit. And that's all 3 hits. And then 3 saves of a 4+ for the Prussians. 2 casualties. So casualties mounting up on the Prussian and Russian front. And that's it. So let's move on to the Allies' turn 4. End of the turn for the Prussian and Russians, and their luck has not held. The Russian commander ordered the fresh Moscow regiment, or Lithuanian regiment, to charge the French battalion, and blundered. So they've moved off to the right. So I've left them there as a reminder that they will come on a successful order roll in the next turn, which meant that he could issue no more orders. So this unit is just left stranded, wondering where their friends have gone to. And then the Prussians had less success, rolled a 10 and then another 10 for their orders to get that square out of square, and failed. So the Prussians are just sitting tight. Forgot to shoot the cannon last turn, but that is the Prussian commander's fault, and probably mine. So all that's left to do now is some shooting. So this Russian battalion, 1 shot against the French. and that is a hit because they're no longer disordered and within half range, and a 4+ saved. One shot here into this French battalion, and that's a hit, and a save of a 4+ saved, and one shot here into the other French line battalion. That is a hit, yeah, and then a save of a 4. That is not a save, so one casualty on that top French unit. And then the cannon will shoot at the nearest closest target, which is this French battalion. It's going to get 2 shots, and it's going to be hitting on 4s. So it misses completely on a 1 and a 2. So cavalry fire or artillery fire hasn't been very effective. The other artillery unit will do the same over the heads, 1 shot, hitting on a 5. And a miss. So artillery has been very ineffective this game. So that's it for the Allies. The disorder is going to come off that French battalion. 1 casualty on the furthest battalion away. So let's see how the French retaliate in their turn 4. So there's not much manoeuvre needs done really anymore, as you can see. The French are in a very good position. They've sort of got a very strong, almost U-shaped defensive line going on here with their 3 battalions. So they've all stayed put. The disorder has come off this battalion, so they're all more or less fresh to keep pouring fire down upon the Allies. The cannon stayed where it is. The only unit that moved was the Lancers have moved around, and I'll bring their casualty marker with them. Just to kind of keep their options open so they can swing round. And these Russians are starting to look like they should be a bit disordered as well. So without further ado, let's get into some French shooting. 3 shots from this battalion into the Russians, hitting on 3s. And that is 2 hits. The Russians are going to save that on 3s, being in a column. Save both, so nothing there. 2 shots from the French cannon into the square, and it is going to be 3s to hit. Again, artillery is just not being effective in this game. 3 shots from this battalion in, 3s to hit, and that is a disorder, and 3 hits, so that square is going to stay disordered, and 3 saves of a 4+. 2 casualties, so they're now shaken, so they will be taking a break test. And then up here, this battalion, 3 shots into the other Prussian battalion, hitting on 3s. And 2 hits this time, and again 2 saves of a 4+, and that is 1 through, so they are now shaken, but no break test there. And that is all the French shooting. It's a nice small handy game this. I'm actually enjoying it. It's nice how quickly you can play Black Powder and still get that feel of mass combat and different units. Anyway, that's my ramble done. So break test here, they're disordered and over 1, so it's -2. Gone. They saw the square off. The break tests have been awful this game. Units just fleeing left, right, and centre. So that's what it looks like now at the end of turn 4. So it's past the midway point of the game at this stage. The Prussians have taken a battering against these 2 French line battalions that have just continuously poured fire, and they were unable to get out of square. So let's see if the Prussian artillery can make an account of themselves, and let's see if these Russians can do anything to push in against this French held position. Let's see what happens in Allied turn 5. Disaster continues to afflict the Russians, failing both orders. They did not charge, and the battalion that blundered off the table did not come back on yet. The Prussians fared a little bit better. They managed to get into a line, so maybe they can pour some effective fire, and their 6-pounder has rolled up, perhaps to cause enough damage on that French battalion to maybe disorder or shake them or something. However, we're going to start with some shooting now, as that's all that can really be done. I'm just going to move this commander up for dramatic effect. So the Landwehr are going to get 3 shots against this line battalion. They are in close range, however they are shaken, so it's going to be 4s to hit. And they managed to get 3 hits, so that's not too bad. And the French are going to save this on 4s. And the French take 1 casualty, so they're up to 2. Not enough by the Prussians yet, but the cannon, grape shot, canister shot into this line battalion. 3 shots, hitting on 3s. All 3 hit. -2 being hit by canister is going to be 6s to save. They take 3 casualties, so they are shaken. I think that's a break test if you're shaken by artillery. Or if you're, yeah, I'm going to check that up right now. So that might have been worth their while. And then it's going to be 1 shot from this Russian battalion into the French. And they miss. And then the Russian cannon, same again, is going to go into this closest unit. And a 5. And they fail, miss again. Maybe it's time to bring that cannon forward or something. So that's good. I'm going to check up this rule to see if this battalion have to take a test. I think they do. They don't. They only take that if they're shaken from closing fire. So they haven't just quite got there yet. But that is it for the Allies in their turn 5. We're going to move into French turn 5 and see what they can do. And there we go, a very bizarre French turn 5. The first order to go off, the only order to go off, was for the Lancers to charge into this battalion and hopefully get them in square. Which they didn't do because they blundered. But then on the blunder chart, they rolled a charge. So they had to charge the closest visible enemy unit, which was this Russian battalion. They did that. They formed square. So by pure happenstance, they managed to do what they wanted, and they are now in this position, perhaps going to mop up the cavalry or the artillery in the rear. So that is it in terms of orders. So we're just going to go into some French shooting now. We're going to get 3 shots from this rear battalion into the landwehr. Again, same thing, 2 hit and 2 saves of a 4+. 1, so they are now in excess of their casualties, so they'll be taking a break test. 3 shots from this unit hitting against that artillery. They're within close range, they are shaken, and it is an unclear target being artillery, so that is a 3 to hit normally, -2 is going to be 5s. And they miss completely. The artillery is now going to shoot at, and I'm just going to have to measure what is actually the closest. So both the square and the artillery piece are equidistant from this cannon and just within its 90-degree arc of fire. So they're going to shoot against that square. It's 3s to hit. This cannon hasn't hit anything yet and has finally hit something. So that has hit the square. It's going to be a 6 to save, and they don't save, so that unit is now shaken and not at all in a good position. So final bit of shooting, 3 shots from the French into this shaken square, 3s to hit. There's a disorder as well, and 3 hits, 3 saves of 4+ for the Russians. They fail all 3, they're up to 7. So they are going to be taking a break test at -3. Do the Russians stand in the face of artillery, cavalry and infantry? 7 -3, 4. They are gone. Break tests have not been good this game. So there's now a large Russian-shaped hole here in the centre, and there's a break test to be taken for this unit at -1. And they flee as well. Oh my goodness, the French have seen off most of the battalions of the Allies. So this is what it looks like at the end of French turn 5. They are in a very strong position. It's all going to come down to whether or not this Allied battalion can come back on. But even then, the Allies have failed in their objective. The French have seen too many of these forces off. The Russians, with 1 battalion, can only occupy 1 zone, which means that the French will hold this area. But however, let's see if the Russians can do anything. Let's see if they can see off at least one of these French battalions. Perhaps all is not lost. One more turn for the Allies, and we'll see what can be done. And because the Allies have only got 3 units left, I'm just going to do the order rules on camera. So, an 8 to get this battalion back on, and they come back on. So, the Russians at least have 1 battalion in play, and that's going to be it. So, let's just do the shooting. So, it's going to be 3 shots from canister once more into this battalion. They all miss. They're obviously terrified, absolutely terrified. 1 shot from this battalion, and that is a miss because the Russians are very poor shots. And then 2 shots into the cavalry. Let's see if this cannon on the hill can do anything. Yes, they can. They can disorder and wound those French who save on a 5+ and save 1. So they take a casualty and are disordered. The cavalry are not moving anywhere for the French last turn. So no orders for the French in turn 6. The cannon tried to hop out just to get a little bit closer, perhaps to annoy that Russian battalion, but failed to do it. So it's just now on to shooting. So it's going to be 3 shots, half range into the side of this cannon. So it's not a clear target, so it's forced to hit, rerolling all misses. And then there is 3 hits and a disorder came out of the reroll. So cannon is disordered. So it takes 3 saves of a 4+ and takes 1 casualty, but it is now also disordered. So 3 shots here, straight in. Would be 3s to hit, -1 for unclear target, and -1 for being shaken. Is 1 hit, that's also a disordering hit, and a 4 to save, which they save. And then this battalion, 3 shots into the Russians, 3s to hit for half range, and all miss. Not good. But that is it for turn 6. They're going to play into turn 7 just to see if this Russian battalion can do anything, but it is not looking good. So let's see if the Allies can do anything. Okay, so the Russian battalion attempted a charge and failed, but managed to get up point blank range to that French battalion. This cannon can't move, and then because the 2 orders were failed by the Russians, this cannon is still staying on the hill. So start shooting with this cannon, 2 shots into the cavalry again, hitting on 4s. There we go, another disorder, holding up that French unit. And then they'll save that on a 5+, which they don't save, so that cavalry unit is now shaken and disordered. So the artillery finally making an account of themselves. And then it's going to be 3 shots, disordered, hitting on 4s. And there is a disorder on this French unit, and 2 shots saving on 6s. 1 save, so they are taking a break test as well, and are going to be at -2. So the last shot, this French or Russian battalion, 1 shot hitting on a 4, and a hit and a save with the French of a 4, saved. So no fire effective there. So break test now for this French unit at -2 because they're 1 in excess and they are disordered. And they're gone. So they managed to see off another French unit. The break tests have been very low this game. Okay, and then the disorder comes off. Perhaps the Allies will be able to do it after all. That's the end of Allied turn 7, on to French turn 7 now. End of the French turn, some orders were very successful. The cannon managed to get out of the buildings and is now enfilading with grape shot that Russian battalion, which is not good news for them, particularly as they have a French battalion already staring them down in the face. And then this battalion managed to get enfilade fire on the cannon, and the disordered cavalry staying where they are. 3 shots here then into the cannon. There's a disorder, and they get to re-roll because of enfilading. And that is 2 hits because of the -1. So it is disordered, and then 2 saves of a 4+. No, so that cannon is now shaken. 1 in excess, and is disordered, so we'll have a break test. French cannon enfilading the poor Russians, so 3s, and there's a disorder, and there is 3 hits, all at -2, saved on 6s. Nope, so 3 casualties on the Russians, and they're disordered. Actually, we're saving on 5s because they're in attack column. Oh no, so they get -1 again. Yes, sorry. So never mind that, because they're tightly packed against artillery. That only counts against small arms fire. So that is right. Beg your pardon. And just to explain that better, is against artillery, if you're in a tight formation, it's -1 to your morale save. I think that's right. There's a +1 for artillery to hit. Let me double check. Yeah, that's right. You don't get the +1 modifier for attack column if it's artillery, so you just go up to your base value of 4, which -2 takes you to 6. So they took 3 casualties, and then the French battalion, 3 shots into them on 3s, 2 hits, and saving those on 3s now because it's small arms and artillery. 1 more casualty, so that's them shaken and disordered. So not good at all for the Russians. They won't be moving. And then a break test over here at -2 for the cannon. Low break tests. It's gone. The cannon is gone. And yeah, that's going to be it. So let's move on. Let's do the last turn. We got this far. Can the Russians salvage anything of this woeful attack on the French position? Let's see. So that was all that the Russians did this turn. Was the commander moved into that unit and was trying to be very heroic and rallied them, managed to do it. So they're no longer shaken, but they're still disordered. And the cannon is going to pour more fire down on the French cavalry and misses. And then 1 shot into the French battalion. Misses. French, turn 8. Again, a very heroic commander for the French, joining this unit of lancers and removing a casualty from them, no longer shaking them, no doubt wanting to charge across the ford and into that Russian cannon. And speaking of cannons, it's time for the French to unload theirs once more into the Russians. 3 shots hitting on 3s. And they're enfilading, so re-rolling. 3 hits. The Russians will save this on 6s. Nope, so they're now at 6 casualties, so that's going to be a break test. And they're not finished because the French battalion is going to fire in. All 3 hit, and another further disorder. And 3 saves of the Russians of a 3+. 4+ actually, because I think it's a -1 for being shaken to your morale. Let me double check that. No, not a thing, so they do manage to save all of those. But they are now 2 in excess and disordered, so it is a break test -3. And that's a 0. The Russian battalion are gone, and the French win the day. So as wisps of smoke rake across this battlefield, the French take back their positions in the built-up area. The cannon returns to its normal position, and they secure the fields once more. They have not been without their casualties. They have lost a battalion, and they have lost a unit of voltigeurs. But the cavalry and these 2 units are untouched, reforming and ready to see what else the Allies will throw at them from across the river. But for now, at least, Napoleon and his army can continue to march unimpeded in this direction. So I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed playing it. Black Powder is a really fun game, even at a small level, I find. Lots can happen, things can change at any minute. I thought when the Russians got up so quickly in the first turn that they would be able to break through and that the French would be immediately on the defensive, but not the case. The French managed to jump out, and yeah, it's just a really interesting game. So, as I say, hope you all enjoyed it, and yeah, happy wargaming.